Hello and welcome to the first video lesson on the new hardware topic. This one is all about input and output devices and computing devices. For this lesson you'll need somewhere to make some notes, so a book, paper and pencil, or if you want to make some notes online, some way of doing that. Either way, you need to make notes. So during the course of this lesson we're going to learn what makes a computing device, what an input device is, what an output device is, and we'll identify some common input and output devices. So, a quick starter for you. Which of these devices are computing devices? Write down on whatever medium you're making notes in which ones of those you think would be classed as computing devices. We'll come back and look at these again later on in the lesson. So what is a computing device? Well, a computing device is any device that goes through the input, process, output cycle. An input, something that gets a value; a process, something that performs a calculation using that input; and output, the result of that calculation being given back to the user. Inputs can be anything from taps on a screen to electrical impulses from a heart monitor, as long as they come from the user. Outputs can be anything including sounds, images, numbers, text, as long as they're given to the user. And a process is any calculation or procedure that takes the input and uses it to produce the output. The simplest example is a pocket calculator. It takes an input, the buttons being pressed. It processes it. It performs the calculation when the equals button is pressed. And then it outputs the result by giving the answer on the screen. Input, process, output. Therefore, it is a computing device. So let's look back at the starter. Which ones of those now, knowing the definition, do you think are computing devices? Well, it was these three. It was a calculator, a PC, and a smart speaker. All of those three take an input, process it, and output the results. A game controller only deals with inputs. It doesn't do any processing, it doesn't give you a result back. A keyboard is the same as a game controller. You use it to give inputs, but it doesn't tell you anything. Nothing comes back through the keyboard. And headphones only do outputs, nothing else, and a hard disk does none of those things. So, the first thing I'd like you to do is to make the following notes. In your books, copy down this. Elaborate on it if you want, write it in your own words, but you need to make a note of the following: that a computing device is any device that goes through the input, process, output cycle, that an input means getting a value, a process means performing a calculation, an output means giving a value back to the user, and then write down some examples: calculator, PC, smartphone. Okay. So what about devices that don't follow the input, process, output cycle? Things like a monitor, a printer, a keyboard or a USB stick. These generally fall into one of three categories. They're either an input device, an output device, or a storage device. An input device is something that takes information from a user and gives it to a computing device. Now that's important. Coming from the user is a vital part of this. If the information that's sent to the computer does not come from the user, it's not an input device. If you make something happen on the computer using it, it's probably an input device. Examples include a keyboard, a mouse, a microphone. All of those things take something from you and put it onto the computer in some way. An output device is something that takes information from a computing device and presents it to the user. Again, it's important that it goes to the user, not another computing device. That's what makes it an output device. You don't interact with output devices. They give you the information. The computer controls them. Examples include speakers, a screen, and a printer. All three of those give the user information. Speakers give sound, screen gives text and images, and printer gives text and images in a different format. The third category is a storage device. This is a device that takes information from a computer and gives it to another computer. It doesn't involve the user at all. USB sticks, for example, are not input devices despite them giving information to the computer, because that information doesn't come from the user. It comes from another computer. So now could you add the following notes? An input device is used to put data from a user onto a computer. An output device is used to give information from a computer to a user, and a storage device is used to transfer information from computer to computer. Okay, now a task to do in your books. Draw out a table with 4 columns. 1 column for computing devices, 1 column for input devices, 1 column for output devices, and 1 column for storage devices. Then take all the devices shown on this screen and place them in the correct columns. The answers for this will be shown in a few seconds, so pause the video if you need more time to work on it. Okay, smartphone, games console, calculator and smartwatch are all computing devices. Microphone, mouse, game controller and keyboard are all input devices. Projector, speakers, printer and screen are all output devices, and portable hard disk, CD and USB stick are all storage devices. Now the assessed task for this lesson is this. Choose one example of each type of device: an input device, an output device, a computing device and a storage device. In Word or PowerPoint or anything you want to use, produce a document that explains the 4 devices you chose. Make sure it covers the purpose of each device, an image of each device, and explain how it is used and what type of information it uses. There's a document on the VLE that will help you, and better marks are going to be awarded if you choose less well-known devices. For example, if you just do a keyboard and mouse, that's not going to get as good scores as something more original. Upload this document to the VLE for marking. For the higher marks, you can choose some more complex devices that fit into more than one category, such as a VR headset or a touchscreen, and explain the same things about those.